Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome on into the Space Cowboy Show. I'm your host, Ricardo, and we are back to talk about some more Cowboys football. We got the Vikings on deck for Sunday Night Football, but there are a couple other things that have happened throughout the week that we need to discuss, as it could change the Cowboys' fortune of things as the season is about to come to a close. We got 4 more games, and a lot can happen in those 4 games. Now, before we dive into that, if you could do me a favor, please make sure to like the video, comment your thoughts, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on more content when it comes out. And most importantly, the channel is powered by Creshman Media. If you haven't done so already, please make sure to go check out the other shows on the network if you enjoyed those particular types of topics. So with that, let's go ahead and dive into this week in Cowboys football. Now, starting things off with Trevon Diggs. Obviously, he's been out for quite some time, and we are trying to figure out, okay, is he going to be coming back? Is he gone? What exactly is his status? And we heard from Brian Schottenheimer a bit about what is going on with Trevon Diggs, and it doesn't sound so good for his future and his immediate impact with the team. In terms of Trevon, he's still in the ramp period, Schottenheimer said. I think he does feel healthy. I know he wants to play, but at the end of the day, we have to do what we think is in the best interest of not just him, but also the football team. And when you miss some time, there's the ramp-up period. It's not just for your body, but for your mind and figuring out some of the defense, and there's some new faces in the huddle and things like that. So again, love him as a player, but ultimately he's got to show us he's ready to do everything the right way. And then when he was asked a follow-up question as to what we want to see from Trevon moving forward, everything, consistency through everything. He's no different than Dak Prescott or Jake Ferguson or Kenny Clark. Just continue to do everything the right way. Though last week was a good first step, and hopefully this week is an even better step, and if it is, you'll see him out there. So when we hear those types of things, I'm not a big fan of hearing those things. Not saying that Schottenheimer is wrong, or I'm saying that the things that he's saying are bad in the sense of, what he's trying to get across. It's more so about where we're at with Trevon Diggs. Now, I have talked about it before that I think that Trevon Diggs will not be a Cowboy past this year, as we are seeing regression. We're seeing him consistently be a hurt guy. And the key thing is that you can't pay a guy that kind of money if he's not producing on the football field and he's not available for you. But I really think when we're really looking at it for what it is, I think that if it's worse than what we think it is, then okay, I understand that. But another part of me, and again, I'm not saying I have evidence to suggest this, it's just the way things move in the Cowboys organization are a bit wonky, and we have seen the Cowboys do some shady things before. So I wouldn't be shocked if the Cowboys are not playing him to avoid him getting injured again, to avoid any guaranteed money in 2026 and so on. So I wouldn't be surprised by that whatsoever. It's just really weird what's been going on with Trevon Diggs. So I would say that for where we're at right now, we don't have a timetable for when he's going to be coming back, but we do know that when he comes back, he will help the defense for sure. But in terms of the long-term implications of Trevon Diggs, I just don't think he's going to be a guy that you can reliably depend on, and I think you're going to have to cut ties with him at the tail end of the year. Now, talking more so about the odds of the Cowboys making the playoffs. With the loss against the Detroit Lions, our odds went down horrifically. We were at like a 9% chance to make the postseason, but there is a opportunity that is starting to open up for the Dallas Cowboys, and that is the possibility of the NFC East. Now, I'm not trying to go down delusions road and talk about how the Cowboys are going to win the NFC East, because at the end of the day, the Dallas Cowboys still have to win their games, and you have to have the Eagles continue their collapse. They were 8-2 when you last played them. They're 8-5, and that's why I would hope that if the Cowboys had beaten Detroit, now we're having an even more realistic possibility of the NFC East being up for grabs. So at this point in time, if the Cowboys win out, you need the Eagles to drop 2 more games. I don't see that happening, but knowing where we're at right now, the Eagles just haven't looked like a good football team for the past several weeks now. The fact that we're even having a conversation about it says a whole lot more about the Philadelphia Eagles than it does about the Dallas Cowboys. The fact is, the Eagles could have wrapped this division up way earlier, but they're tripping over themselves. And I think that for them, it looks very much so like the 2023 collapse that we're seeing. Granted, they might still win the NFC East, but when you're going from a team that's looking at getting a possible 1 seed to now, okay, can we even get a 2 or even 3 seed? That's when you know things are really starting to go left in that organization, where things just don't look great whatsoever. Now, again, I understand they just won the Super Bowl, and I'm not trying to take away that accomplishment. You have to hope that you just finish the job, close out the NFC East, and don't let the Cowboys take advantage of your mishaps. Because for the Cowboys side of things, do I trust the Cowboys in the playoffs? I don't trust them on the road, especially with how their offense and their defense has been on the road and them being 2-5 on the road. But if you have a home playoff game, we're having a completely different discussion. But again, is it delusional to talk about having a playoff push? No, not necessarily, because the Eagles are putting you in that particular position. And again, a lot can change in these next 4 weeks, guys, but it all comes down to the Cowboys doing their part. Now, I do think the Cowboys will win this game on Sunday Night Football against the Vikings. Now, if they somehow find a way to lose this game, we're going to have some serious discussions about Brian Schottenheimer and what he's trying to build here. Because we have seen the little bits and pieces of a very good football program being established here. And I understand it's not all sunshine and roses when it comes to how the season has gone. But the fact is that when you're implementing a new football program, if you look at the history of the Cowboys with their first-time head coaches, when we had Mike McCarthy, we went 6-10. I understand that Dak Prescott was hurt, but defensively, we looked horrible. And offensively, we were doing a lot what we could to stay in those games, but it just wasn't enough. Then you look at Jason Garrett's first full year, not the interim year. You went 8-8. And I believe we were 8-6 at one point, and we could have made the playoffs, but you ended up failing down the stretch, which was pretty much the living embodiment of his tenure as Cowboys coach. And so I think for Brian Schottenheimer, the fact is if you told me when the season began, which by the way, I believe I said the Cowboys were going to go 10-7 when the season began. If you told me that the Cowboys were in the 9-win range or even 8-win range in his first year, and you kind of told me what happened during the season, I'd be like, okay, well, that's a start. Because let's be honest with ourselves, guys. Anyone that's a Cowboys fan, did you really think that this team was going to win the Super Bowl? And I'm not saying that to take away the deficiencies or the mistakes that this team has done on all sides of the football. But at the same time, we really have to look at ourselves and say, okay, if the Cowboys were truly going to be a contender this year, and you really thought that, I don't know how you came to those conclusions, because we saw after you traded Micah Parsons, to me it signaled that 2025 was going to be a year where you're just like, okay, we're just waiting until the following year to really go all in and make a push to be a contender. And so going through the motions of this soft retool year, now you see positives, right? You added George Pickens, you added Quinnen Williams, you added Logan Wilson, and these are guys that I believe will have long-term impacts for you. Of course, health bearing, obviously, but I think that for me, 2025 was always the year where you just kind of see what happens and you go from there. If the Cowboys somehow manage to get into the playoffs, that's a great first step, but I will say, getting into the playoffs when you're not in control of your own destiny, I'm not a fan of, because it just signals that you needed help, and also that you had to go through some trials and tribulations that you really shouldn't have had to go through, as we saw if you go back and watch some of those games. But I do think that while the first year of a head coach, it's kind of hard to get a gauge on what exactly he's going to be long term. The key things is that we're seeing the way that he talks to the players, the way that he communicates, the way that he handles things. It's a lot different than what we've seen. Not saying that's going to result in a championship, but I do think the Cowboys accidentally stumbled into a really good hire with Brian Schottenheimer. I think that at the core, he's a football guy. Being the son of Marty Schottenheimer and seeing on film what they're doing, there are things that they still have to work on. Obviously, on the offensive side of the ball, play calling has to be more consistent, but we're seeing results, which is important. And then defensively, I don't have to really beat the dead horse there, because we already are aware of what's going on defensively and that you need to move on from Matt Eberflus. And then even with your special teams, I already talked about you need to move on from Nick Sorensen. So for me, if the Cowboys can somehow manage to make this thing work with Brian Schottenheimer, and they accidentally stumbled into a really good coach, which I think they did. And I said this when the Cowboys hired Brian Schottenheimer. I have no problem with the hire that you make, but the most important thing that you have to do as an organization and as a front office, no matter who the coach is you need to supply him with the talent, and you need to be able to be in a position where you are giving that guy all the tools necessary to succeed. And the Cowboys have started to do that. Compared to that with Mike McCarthy, we saw in 2024, when you don't give a guy the ingredients to do what he needs to do, it's going to show on the football field. 2024 was a lost season because the Cowboys did nothing whatsoever with Mike McCarthy going into that final year of his contract, and they didn't really add anybody in free agency, and you just had the draft to add players, and that was it. And that is why, for me, whenever we have conversations about the Dallas Cowboys, to me, the front office will get the most flack out of anything, because it's the same two dudes in Stephen Jones and Jerry Jones that have been running the show for this amount of time, and the only things that have changed are the coaches and the players, but they have been the consistent thing that's remained. So if you're not going to do your job as executives and as people that are running the football operation of this organization and get players to help this team win, then what are we even doing? That's where I think with Brian Schottenheimer as compared to Mike McCarthy, I think Brian Schottenheimer is pushing the envelope a bit more to go acquire these players, and on top of that, be more on making sure when these players are added, they're in the right positions to win. Like, if you go back and you watch how Mike McCarthy was moving when it came to how we were in the draft room and when it came to player personnel and things like that, he was kind of just like, okay, is what it is type of guy. Like when we got CeeDee Lamb, his first round draft pick here, right, under him as Cowboys head coach. You know, Jerry being so excited for CeeDee Lamb, and Mike McCarthy's just kind of like, oh, okay, I guess, you know, it is what it is, right? And then even more so, what really alarmed me was the Mozzie Smith versus Matt Bergeron debate. We saw that video about how Mike McCarthy really wanted Matthew Bergeron, who I think is a solid offensive lineman in this league. And I think that changes things if you ended up going down that route. The way that him and Will McClay were talking, and he was just like, all right, it is what it is. We'll just go with Mozzie. To me, I don't like that type of energy. Now, I'm not trying to say that all the coaches should be listened to, because we have seen that the Cowboys have given way too much authority to their coaches on who they want. And we saw this with Rod Marinelli and with TJ Watt many years ago. Oh, I don't want him because he can't put his hand in the dirt, even though he's a very talented football player. But moving forward, I'm really curious to see what they do with their 2 first-round picks in 2026. Now, as for what I think is going to happen this particular game, I think the Cowboys will take care of business versus the Vikings, and I think they'll win comfortably, and then we just kind of wait and see what happens from there. I don't really have much more commentary on the game. Again, when we're talking about the Cowboys going up against an opponent that isn't that good, you should be taking care of business. I'm not going to put too much thought into a team like the Vikings that, to be honest with you, haven't had a good year. And if you find a way to lose this game against the Vikings, that is a huge indictment for you as a football program. And now I'm looking at Brian Schottenheimer differently. I'm looking at these players differently, because if you can't find a way to win games against these types of opponents, that's when we're going to start having a problem. Got the Vikings coming to town, then the Chargers next week. Take care of business versus these Vikings, and we just go from there. So down below, tell me what you guys feel about this game. Do you guys think the Cowboys will take care of business? Do you think it's a trap game for the Cowboys? By all means, put that down below, and I hope to see you guys then. Have a good one, guys. Goodbye.